Yeah, you're not joking. Rogue One, they straight up killed everybody. None of you are canon. Be gone.
Be gone, thought. Okay.
Creatures in Corridors podcast stream.
If I could
Got the notification on my phone.
Oh, you got the notification?
Yeah.
Okay. Podcast stream. Okay, we are live. And okay, I'm gonna mute this.
Yeah,
Creatures in
you're not
Corridors
joking.
podcast stream.
That's coming through somebody's mic.
Got the notification on my phone. That was mine. I turned it off though. But it was working. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, and then let's see. Test. Put that there and see if it pops up in OBS. No. Okay, that's top chat, live chat. Okay, yeah, live chat is up and going. So if anyone does have a question for us, it will be there. Okay. Okay, so everyone, welcome to The Long Rest. This is going to be ideally a 1-hour format podcast where we will be primarily discussing the events of the previous session, whether it be the Star Wars 5e campaign or various other ones that we may get involved in the future. My name is Connor. I am the man behind the screen, as it were, for The Long Rest. I am a player in the campaign. I play Dozek Dashim, the Jedi Sentinel. On the right here, we have Russell. He is our DM. And on the left, we have Kyle. He is our off DM / VP, I guess you could title him. And I'll let them take it away. And with that, let's get started.
No gang signs. Just kidding. Throw them up. Well, howdy. Welcome, everyone. This is, in case you can't tell, pretty new for us. We're still trying to figure everything out. We're, kind of a blossoming channel right now. But we're very excited to
a budding channel.
Budding, yeah, still budding. Yeah, we're like a seed in the ground. Hasn't been watered yet. But yeah, we're just here to talk D&D and Star Wars and nerd out. And yeah, so Kyle, what'd you think of the session?
I enjoyed the session. I mean, we always like a good little combat scenario and anything, and then we had some pretty epic moments, especially at the end there.
Yeah, it actually started off with a pretty heavy Vrain doing quite a lot at the beginning there. We started off meeting the Mechanist, who's an NPC that probably will show up again from time to time, I imagine. He seemed somewhat important,
Well, we'll see. It's depends on, I guess, what you or we have in store, or how long we're on Coruscant.
Yeah, and Vrain got to kind of do a little back and forth with him, talking about some secret plans and whatnot, while everyone else was off shopping for droids. Didn't notice you didn't buy a droid. No, not interested in that. Just yet?
Well, at level 8, I'm going to get the companion keeper feat, so it's kind of something I'm going to work toward more organically, I guess.
Okay, wait till there's like a little more.
Yeah, get the feat to it, and then kind of work with you probably before leading up to that to justify something happening.
For sure. So yeah, so we had that go down, and then after that, you guys headed off back to, I don't know if I have an official name for that street, but went to where you had previously purchased weapons. There was like a weaponsmithy guy back from like our, I guess, first episode now. First or second. I don't remember which was actually the first episode.
The first episode where was one of our characters died.
Oh yeah.
And then I think we saw him 2 or 3 sessions in when we went to spend money.
Yep. And yeah, so we went back there and come to find out that the mess that everybody left behind actually came back to bite them. There was a Republic. The Republic had kind of shut down that corner of the street, and could not access the weaponsmithy that y'all had shopped with before. Which,
Is what it is.
yeah, you guys certainly could have pushed in and tried to force it, but
Right. I mean,
everybody was like, let's not make any more messes for now.
realistically, we probably could have killed everybody and everything there, but that's not the point,
I mean, if realistically, you could probably take out half of Coruscant if the conditions were right.
Probably. I could definitely see that. So
Yeah, so that went down, and then I had a mysterious stranger who's been kind of a recurring character. Everyone's trying to get a read on that guy, but of course, both of our Force users have a high interest in this hooded old man. Nobody was really sure what his motivations were, or if he was. I mean, clearly he was some kind of Force user, but that was about the most anyone knew about him.
yeah, definitely, for
What are
sure.
your thoughts, like, just out of curiosity, what are your thoughts, like, from an in-character perspective on that character, the hooded figure? I guess before you found out his true identity, what were your thoughts?
Well, his first introduction was 2 sessions ago when he interfered with the mission we were trying to do.
No, it was
Uh,
before that.
what's up?
Well,
No, Vrain's first
officially.
interaction. Vrain's first interaction with
Oh,
him was then,
sorry.
right? So, all he was in was just like a risk. He comes in. We're trying to stealth into this compound or this warehouse, and I'm like, "Yo, we're wasting time. Like, the longer we're all here talking to this old man, the more likely we are to get found out because we're just like 5 people like in a line right behind their like security fence. Like, it's not going to work." And so that was kind of annoying. And
It's so funny to me. Sometimes I have to take a step back and like think about like if this was like a movie or something, like what this would look like on camera. And I just imagine like everyone's like Mission Impossible, like getting ready to go like stealth into this warehouse, and then suddenly this like old man just starts talking out of nowhere, and then everybody's just like standing around chit chatting, and Braid's like, "Are we doing this?" Like,
I know, right? Like I just imagine like he was just there. He's like opening the fence, and he just like opens it up, and he turns, and he just like stands up. He just like stands there, just waiting, like just like annoyed, almost confused. I don't even not confused, just like annoyed. Like it's all right if you're gonna like appear here randomly. You got like 3 seconds to say your piece and leave. And it's just like you're sabotaging the mission. I don't know, get out of here.
Yeah,
And then
super high, especially because everybody had like, I think they had already rolled stealth checks at that point too,
yeah,
and they start standing around having a conversation.
I know. I'm like, this is like get out of here, man. Like we're wasting time.
Well,
Um,
I try to interject stuff like that. That's like, we want to talk to him, but also this is such a terrible time for him to show up.
yeah,
Like,
I
why
didn't want
can't
to
you
talk.
show up when we're taking a long rest?
I didn't want to talk to him at all. I was like, bro, I do not care anything about you at all.
Right.
All I know is you're interfering with the mission, and that's already put you off in a negative light.
Yeah.
And so when he comes
I
around,
think. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say when he came around again, I guess in this last episode, he was wanting to get everybody's like attention or whatever. And I guess at that point, Vrain was just curious. But he still was like, just didn't care. Like he's like, this isn't my business. I'm just here because, I guess just because I've nowhere else to be right now.
Yeah, you're like, let's hear him out so we can be done with him. Like,
Pretty much, exactly. It's just like, and I didn't want the 2 people to go off by themselves. So I was like, and at the end of the day, like information is key, right? So the sooner we figure out who he is and what he's doing and all that stuff is helpful.
yeah.
Then it turned out that we just killed him brutally.
Well, we'll get there. We'll get there. I've always, I think that's kind of an interesting divide in our party. Because at first I thought it was like almost like a dissonance between character creation, and I'm just like, man, do we need to have a talk? But like, the kind of the push and pull between these Force users and the more like technologically inclined people, like because Boldgrave and Vrain and even Karo for that matter are very much like, you know, they're in the moment. They're like, hey, we're on Coruscant, we're doing jobs, trying to make credits. Like they're very like realist, and the both of the Force users are kind of more in their ideals and have these grand plans of grand, you know, things to come.
Right. Well, the Jedi and the Sith are both religions inherently, so
True.
it makes sense at the end of the day. It's like you're having a cleric and I guess a warlock, or maybe, but you can imagine.
Effectively,
I don't know what you would consider a Sith. I mean, I don't know what you would consider a Sith in like D&D lore, but it's kind of like a warlock, like thematically.
Yeah, with that kind of patron and that
your connection to this darker essence. But so they're both. So it's kind of, it takes their role in the setting a little bit different. And
it's been a bit of an adjustment to like where like magic and religion are kind of one and the same in Star Wars, as opposed to D&D where they're a little more separate. They're still kind of intertwined, but not nearly as strongly.
Yeah, there's clear like not derivatives per se, but like I don't know, just there's very distinct elements of magic in D&D.
There's like patrons, and then like there's wizards who are like, I don't have a patron other than this spell book, homie. Like
he's like, I've got my brain and these random like, you know, feathers and stuff to connect me to the weave. I've got feathers, gold. You know,
the Vancian, like, yeah. But that, I think that's like inherently a very Star Wars theme. And at first I saw it, I was like, oh, did I mess up? Like, do we need to like get the party together and like talk about this? But the technology versus naturalism and religion and stuff is like all the way back to the original trilogy, is very much like, you know, this push and pull. Like the Empire is like all technology and law and control, and the Force is like Dagobah. It's chaotic and weird and unspecific sometimes.
Yeah, especially at the beginning, it was just like you're just like, oh yeah, it's the Force. And then it's like, oh yeah, now Luke Skywalker Force jumped out of nowhere, and you're just like, he jumps out of the it's just like, how in the world did like, where did you get from?
Mm-hmm.
But
just making things float to, you know, all manner of things. Yep.
I don't know the exact time he was on Dagobah though. I'm sure you could. I'm sure you could look it up online somewhere.
Oh yeah. There's a wealth of the Wikipedia has been my best friend with this campaign. I have to say, because I've been a Star Wars fan since, you know, I was a little kid.
I've been a Star Wars. I don't even remember first watching Star Wars. It feels like it's something I've always known about my entire life. I don't remember the first time I watched it at all. It's kind of crazy.
I think. Yeah.
Apparently, according to Lucasfilm, at the time, the official word from Lucasfilm was that Luke spent 18 months on Dagobah. So a year and a half of training that first time he was there.
Wow.
That's at least helps justify it a little bit. But man, that's saying the entire second movie took place over the course of 18 months.
And then it says there was a 6-month window between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi.
That's crazy, because it was like 20 years in the real world.
Yeah. So A New Hope is like maybe like 2 years before Battle of Yavin, somewhere around there.
It says that the duel on Dagobah took place 3 ABY with the dark spirit of Vader.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Oh, wow. Yeah, those are the kind of things that until you really like get in the nitty gritty, you're just kind of like, yeah, I knew some amount of time passed, an unspecific amount of time
like,
passed.
Sometimes had to have passed. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it's definitely something that they like write into the movies, and then later on when it's like trying to develop the books and the series, the legacies, the canon, they're just like, we need to actually put a time frame on some of these events. Just because we have people contributing to the lore, so now we need to have a more strict lore.
And that's before we even touch on things like relativity, like, oh, it's a big planet, so time moves slower.
I don't know if Star Wars does that, but I've noticed a lot of sci-fi or fantasy, space fantasy type things don't really take into consideration time, different like I don't even know what to call it in layman's terms. But
Time dilation? Is that what
basically, I was thinking like time differentials or some differentials or something like that. But yeah, because obviously the bigger the planet, the slower time moves on the planet, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Well,
right.
we could talk all day about the beauty of Star
Just go
Wars,
watch Inception. Inception loosely explains it.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, so this mysterious hooded figure appears, and he beckons the party to come to his place of living, and everyone agrees. To some characters are not thrilled about it, but they're like, well, like Rain. Well, if we can be done with it, let's just go and hear him out and see what this is all about. So they end up there, and immediately, as soon as you get in there, there's definitely some red flags, blood on the floor, and just very mysterious situation. And so he reveals he doesn't hard reveal himself, but he's basically trying to steal Dozak from the party. He's like, come train with me, leave these guys behind. I don't want anything to do with them. I just want you. And the party is, especially Boldgrave, very vocal about not trusting him, and basically like, Dozak, you probably don't want to do this. And I little behind the scenes magic. I was using an ability similar to the vampire in Dungeons and Dragons, so I essentially had charmed Dozak using a little force magic, and which turned into a combat encounter, as things often do. Boldgrave swung first. I will just say I did not swing first. And things got a little more out of hand from there. He was kind of a force vampire. The race specifically that I actually based that on I think it's Anzat or Enzat. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but Anzat. They're I don't know exactly where they appear in canon or anything. Probably in Clone Wars. Everything's in Clone Wars. So we had a pretty meaty encounter. Kind of a mini boss battle for this first 1 to 5 like tier of the campaign. And what'd you think of the encounter?
I really liked the summoning of the people, the spirits element, whatever they actually were. And the guy was pretty powerful. I liked all his force cancellation abilities. It's satisfactory watching. Satisfying, that might be just it. It's really satisfying watching, I don't know, counterplay, I guess, from the DM in general. Like, I feel like that's always, a lot of DMs are afraid to not punish their players, but like I said, like I think I said this previously before somewhere, like, you do to the players what the players do to them. Like,
take away their shiny toys sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just like, hey, you have to think outside the box now. Like, this is.
Yeah, I really went in with the mindset, like when I designed it, I was really going for like kind of like an abjuration, just focused almost entirely on defense with very little offensive magic. He did have an offensive spell, which I don't think I even used. It was kind of a not get out of jail free, but just kind of a like, things are not going my way, so this is my table flip spell. But yeah, I really went for like a just defensively focused, and his entire goal was just kind of to basically corrupt Dozak and take advantage of his failed save, which was lucky on my part, but unlucky on Connor's part.
It worked out, kind of.
Just a little bit.
What's it called?
Yeah.
And it was yeah, like, it makes sense though, because right, he's like, I focus on defensive mages and I use my summoned minions to deal my damage for me, basically. It looks is the setup, and I think
oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say it was the minions themselves that, like, I think really changed Vrain's perspective on the fight.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, that then you were like, this is some weird stuff. Like, what is going on?
this is slightly above my pay grade, but like more importantly, we talked about this before, but like having a female Chiss Jedi is kind of its own point of interest for Vrain, and because
Being a Chiss yourself.
being a Chiss myself and coming from the Chiss ascendancy, like Chiss, like grown adult women aren't supposed to be force sensitive, and the Chiss biology basically, and so the fact that there is one is a point of interest on his radar, and so his part of the reason for him giving up was to try to get more information about this woman. Part of him was hoping that everybody would kind of follow suit a little bit, and because I was like, if he does want to talk, then maybe if we all like just stop for a bit. And
and you know, they say hindsight is 2020. I was thinking about the session, I think maybe the day after, and I was like, you know, that probably should have been like a performance role or some kind of like charisma based role.
Maybe persuasion. It just depends on like which like the intent behind it. And so sometimes I don't know if you just be like, hey, I don't know exactly what your intent is. Roll like deception or persuasion, depending on which one you're actually trying to do. Like, are you trying to fake fake a surrender, or are you trying to be genuine with your surrender? And
well, the reason I say performance is because you didn't actually say anything. You set down your rifle and assumed kind of a submissive stance, but I don't think you actually like really said anything in character to this vampire. So that's why I say performance, just because it was like, well, he's putting on a show, but
actions speak louder than words, you know?
Yeah,
10 out of 10 persuasion. But
yeah.
Yeah, it's, I mean, a roll would have probably been reasonable. But yeah,
just
they're good working out because all he
him.
did was walk in between both groups, and then just didn't be. He pincered himself because he thought we weren't going to do anything, and that kind of backfired a little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of funny sometimes because the role play doesn't always come out verbally, or like oftentimes I'll in my head I'll be like, okay, what would this guy do? Like, you know, I don't really like say it, but I am like thinking and responding in character. And like you said, actions speak louder than words. So I didn't say anything, but he was kind of like, well, this guy looks like he's surrendering, and this Boldgrave is probably not actually surrendering. So let's keep a mental note of that. But this Mandalorian is really doing a lot of hurt. So let's see if we can deal with him next. So yeah, in my head, I definitely took note of it and did not ignore it by any means. It was very much.
Yep, he still pincered himself, so we turned around and so he's just like, oh wait, all of a sudden he's flanked. He flanked himself, kind of. I don't know what the best, but he had no choice because that's where everybody was hiding over there. So we are just kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, it was a tough encounter because his plan was not great. I think I talked a little bit about this after the session. His plan was pretty rash, especially for, you know, like a wise master. Definitely inviting a band of bounty hunters armed to the teeth into your home was probably not the right move. Maybe should have told them to put their weapons outside the door or something. But again, like in my head, I was like, well, this vampire is hungry. I mean, he is kind of making a desperation play that he feeds on the Force, and there aren't a lot of Force users on Coruscant, much less ones that he could, you know, lure back to his lair and feed on. So he really was just kind of like, I need this to happen, and I need it to happen now, or I'm gonna be even weaker than I would be.
Yeah, something I just thought about right now is like an interesting twist that could have happened in that. I mean, not twist. An interesting development that could have happened in that scenario was if he just took Connor and like teleported out of there or something.
Yeah, I just
like what me and Boldgrave surrender, and he just looks at these and he's just like, I've got somebody. Like, peace out. He dimension doors out of there, takes Connor with him, and then it completely changed the dynamic of the next like session or two.
Right. And even though as a GM, I never expect my players to retreat. I guess like maybe in his head there was like a small hope that like you would see his show of force and tactically retreat. Like if things were not going your way, like when you sit down your rifle, like and if the encounter had gotten to the point where you were in fact losing, again, I pretty much most parties are going to fight to the death. I don't think anyone runs unless that is just like somebody has to propose it.
Until like until like half the party's down and everyone's just kind of like, maybe it's time to go now. Like, sorry guys.
3 out of 5 party members are unconscious, and the rogue is like, well, I guess I'm going to save my own skin.
Yeah, classic rogue stuff. Pretty much.
So yeah, I guess like maybe I was hoping that once a party member went down, he might make a persuasion or something and be like, do you really want to die for this guy? Like, so I don't know, things that could have come up but didn't.
Yep.
Yeah. Makes sense. All in all, was pretty nice little wrap up. I wish it had been a little more. I don't know. Like it. I hope it didn't feel anticlimactic. He was supposed to be kind of like a mini boss, not like a big bad or anything. But it, it had been something that I'd been teasing for a couple of sessions.
No, it was. It seemed pretty good. It just like it was just, the having the evil reveal. I think if you would just managed to escape one time after he revealed he was evil, it could have changed the plot. But then again, we did ice him hard on accident. Yeah. So sometimes that just happens. You just roll, you just ice them and they die, and you're just like, all right.
There's certainly a world where you could have taken him prisoner and tried to interrogate him for more information or, what have you. But Mandalorian's got a Mandalorian sometimes.
Yep.
Just incinerated him, which was awesome. Seeing that. Because I rolled the con save and everything and failed it, which was pretty spicy.
Yeah, for sure. It was it's a good a time as any for a natural one. So yeah, and then Anthony had his really cool moment, which you guys can go see by watching the stream itself. And one of our characters, Fulgor, had a really good Sith moment that everybody really enjoyed, and you should probably go watch it for yourself to find out what that looked like. It was pretty dope. Definitely
a defining character moment for Fulgor. He's been a little on the quiet side in most of our sessions, but I just kind of like pictured him as just kind of that strong silent type. And when he does say something, boy, does it have some weight to it. And it was I didn't react probably as strongly as I should have in the moment. But thinking about it later, and especially watching it later, I was just like, damn, that was a banger of a line that he delivered.
Yeah, I hope we see more of that. That's exactly the type of like Sithmanship that
I awarded inspiration for that, by the way. That is definitely deserving of a character.
That's probably reasonable.
It should also be noted that at some point, any of these highlights that we bring up on the podcast, we will have a timestamp on the video so that you can go back on previous streams and catch those. Those will be in the work, however. There is not one up at this moment.
Yeah, like in the future, I'd like to get like chapter markers for kind of some of the different points.
Yeah, for sure. Classic YouTube stuff. Different talking points, different scenes.
Yeah, we definitely have a lot more experience with D&D than we do the technical side of
Speaking of experience with D&D, something we never really talked about, and now that we've kind of finished discussing our discussion, did you want to go ahead and talk about your D&D history experience?
I'd love to. So it all started when I was a child. No, I was kidding. Yeah, my first experience, I'm not entirely sure how old I was, But a good friend of mine who lived not too far away, Alex Kreider, he we would hang out all the time. That was kind of, I really hadn't even had a taste of like fantasy stuff, but he was like super into fantasy. He had this cool art book with like dragons and angels, and I would look through it and I was just like, wow, these are cool. This is like before Magic the Gathering was like in my life too. So it was just like seeing all this like cool art. And he also played Warcraft. I think it might have been the first or second one. I don't know. It was a long time ago. But yeah, I started expressing some interest in like classic fantasy. I think that was the same year I had seen The Lord of the Rings. So actually, it might have even been previous to Lord of the Rings. I don't know. But anyways, I'm getting a little sidetracked. So his dad had some kind of like starter kit. I don't even know what edition it was. We were definitely using D20s, so maybe like third edition. And yeah, all I remember was like we went into this cave to fight some goblins, and I could not seem to roll the hit to save my life. He made a joke about my like sword being like glued into my scabbard. Like I couldn't even get the sword out of the scabbard, and I just thought that was the funniest shit ever as a kid. And I just loved that kind of relaxed experience, and it was just so cool to me. It blew me away. Um, and then sadly, I kind of stopped hanging out with him. I don't know if he moved or what happened, but it was many, many years before I even played again. And then the next time I played, I was in like college, and went down to the old Gamers Den. Anybody who lives in our city will know that all too well. But yeah, I met a guy through college who was a DM. I believe they were playing Pathfinder, and they invited me to their campaign. I played a dwarf fighter, just classic, archetype, and it was kind of a like Eberron type of setting. I remember there being like a lightning rail and airships and stuff. And so then I got a little experience as an adult playing, and that was super cool. Man, the guy who was like kind of the face of our party was just super good at role playing. He was playing like a ranger or something, and he just would take it away. There was a guy who played an artificer. He had an enchanted spoon that he would throw, and it would had returning properties. So he would like had this weird weapon, and he had like a golem. So that was kind of like my first real like scrapes with being a player. And then a few years later, well, I guess around the same time, I started getting into Call of Cthulhu. I'd caught the RPG bug at that point. I played in a couple of Cthulhu sessions with my friend Otto, and um, that was an entirely different experience for anyone who's played Call of Cthulhu versus D&D. That was very, very like off-putting, but in a good way. And then after that, my first time DMing was Cthulhu. I had actually kind of like almost jumped ship at that point. So I was living at my apartment with Anthony, who plays Fulgor, and I started GMing Cthulhu like once a month or so, and I used a couple pre-written adventures, and I kind of added my own flair and twist to things. And then I think that was about the time, or actually maybe a little bit before. I don't know, it all happened around the same time. Fifth edition came out. Kyle actually ran our first fifth edition game. I played a druid, a dwarf druid. I love dwarves. I don't know what it is. I am a dwarf and I'm digging a hole. I just love their whole aesthetic. So yeah, I played in that campaign. Kyle ran that for a few sessions. We had some stories that we still reference to this day. And then I was like, well, I've GM'd Cthulhu. How hard could D&D be? And then I just kind of took it from there. Sorry, I know that was a super long-winded story, but you wanted the history.
Right, for sure. No, it's
You gave a good account.
That's basically, I remember the story. Speaking of that story, I still remember one day I plan on miming again, because like that world that I ran is still the skeleton of the world I'm running right now in our off campaign.
Oh, nice.
I'm keeping the same like mental. I'm fleshing it out way more this time. So somewhere in this world, there is a paladin deep underwater.
Oh yeah, yeah. Connor's paladin that he played. He was also in that campaign. Yeah, that was the meme. It's still a meme to this day. We joke about Oath of Connor.
Well, they were all in like an alcove, a small alcove on like a cliffside, and like a bunch of like baby spiders basically like came out of nowhere and started like attacking them all. But this is like a super small, like between 5 and 10 foot size alcove, and so Russ, our druid, was like, I know how to kill all these spiders. I'm going to cast Thunder Wave in here. And the alcove was about 50 feet above sea level.
It was like a swarm of tiny spiders.
And they were like crawling up on them.
I was just like, let's just one-shot them, right?
Right. Failing to realize that the entire party was also in the range of the Thunder Shock or Thunder Wave, whatever it was at the time. The paladin fails the check, flies out of the alcove, and drops 50 feet into the water. And if you know anything about water, that hurts.
Or falling. Yeah, that was the day we discovered falling damage was a thing.
And
while also wearing full plate. So
yeah,
here I am sinking to the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, it was pretty just straight, like, it was brutal. It was funny. Super unfortunate for Connor though.
Yeah, it was a big rip, but
it's a great meme. It's a big rip.
It was a great meme. We still reference that all the time. It's so funny.
What's it
if I had $1 for every time somebody made a joke when we're casting Thunder Wave.
Well, since I took up a good portion talking about my history, Kyle, why don't you go ahead and share your history with D&D and I guess fantasy at large?
Man, my history with fantasy is super, super. My entire life, I don't even know where to begin. I read Lord of the Rings back in like 5th grade.
Wow.
So obviously it started before that. So I don't remember the details exactly. I think just when you're the superhero genre, the fantasy, you kind of just like pick up on all of that intuitively. And then I think right after I read the books, I think the movies came out, so it was really good timing. I also read Harry Potter back in like 3rd grade or whatever it was. So like it's just, it's constant. It's just a constant like theme in my life, and obviously growing up, you hear all these jokes about D&D and how it's like the ultimate like nerd experience, and you're like, that's great. Now I need to experience this for myself. So finally in high school, it was the New Year's Eve into New Year's Day, I believe, of my junior year. So this was 2007 going into 2008. We bought I bought like a 3.5 for Dummies book at like a Walden Books, I think it was, and and then eventually I think we bought the Player's Handbook, and I built this.
Back in the dark days before Google.
Yeah, pretty much. I built and a halfling rogue because I just like rogues, and halflings are good at sneaking. So I was like, it was a halfling rogue,
yeah.
And my dad was actually the DM for it because he played when he played in high school, and so he DM'd it. It was me and a couple of my friends that can make it that week, and we go in. We get our guys, we go into the first dungeon, and in the entrance to the dungeon, like we're all like level 1 characters, there's like an ogre. Just one ogre in the level 1 in the dungeon. And so I'm like, I'm a rogue. I'm gonna see if I can sneak around him to backstab him. And right, that makes sense.
As all good rogues should do. Yeah.
Exactly. But like we're all new to the game, and my friends like started making like off remarks about like how I'm being like a wuss because I'm not taking them head on, and nobody knew any better at the time. So I'm like, fine. So I went up, I attacked them. Can't remember what I did. The point is, on the ogre's turn, legit, insta kill on the spot. I was just like, this is your guys' fault. You guys know this, right? Yeah. So anyways, after they ran away or they killed the ogre. I can't remember. They conveniently went back to town and picked up another halfling rogue who was identical to the one that, in the truest sense, because
my fallen brother.
Yes, exactly. and so we went back and then we killed it. We continued going on and it was fine. We were memeing around our cleric. Well, at the time, he got this like white bed sheet, acting like he was like a holy man or something like that. Our wizard was a dwarf. He was a. I think we rolled 3d6 then, because there were 3.5, and our wizard had like a negative Constitution modifier.
Oh no!
I can't remember if we rolled down the line or not. I don't think we did. But I can't remember exactly what the reason for. But he had like a negative Constitution modifier for some reason, and
3d6 is brutal enough.
what's it called? And then he's like, he wanted to play a wizard, and he's like, I have to be a dwarf just to increase my con to get it to at least a -1 modifier. And so wizards in 3.5, their hit die was a die 4. So so his starting HP was 3 as a wizard.
Excuse me, a die 4?
Yeah, people are spoiled nowadays, man. He called himself like Hrothgar the Hazardous, and we kept memeing. He's like, "You're Hrothgar the Hazardous, who's only hazardous to himself." And it was a great time. Then like the next week, we had more friends join, and it turns out that one of our friends who joined, their father had was a big tabletopper as well, and so. He offered to basically run like a full campaign for us. We kind of congregated over there, and he's like tested other modules and other gaming services, whatever. And I spent a good first couple years of college playing in that campaign, where I played a half elf paladin named Celestria in 4th edition. So it was, and then I came to Corpus, and I was like, I got to play D&D. Where's everybody at?
Where the homies at?
And that's when our 5th edition game kind of started here. And then Russell kind of took over as DM after that, because that's more his cup of tea.
I just had a lot of free time and a lot of ideas, and I was just like, what?
Yeah.
Somebody come play through this nonsense that I've come up with.
What's it called? Like I enjoy DMing, but like I'm a player at heart ultimately. Like I don't know. Then I watched all.
I feel the same way. Every time I play a character, I'm like, I enjoy this, but man, do I love DMing. They're just like it.
What's it called? There's just I don't know how to describe it. But it's like you really like have to like mesh like your DM as experience and your player as experience, and kind of like mesh them together, because like it helps you being proactive in the world if you have DMing experience. I think a little bit. I mean, that's really important, and that's definitely a hard skill to like learn until you've like DM'd a little bit, I think. And you tend to like describe what you're doing more and all of that stuff. You can make your descriptions better and explain what you're doing. I think that's kind of why with like Krax, my character before we started streaming, like that's why I was able to get descriptive with him, is because you kind of like you just like unlock the mechanical restrictions of the narrations, and you just kind of have at it, because ultimately it doesn't matter.
Yeah, if it's for flavor, I don't think any DM is gonna steer you away from describing your actions.
Exactly.
Good DM, anyways.
Yeah. If I want to bash this guy's face in and like take out his brain and eat it, like no one's gonna stop me. People look at me weird, but no one's gonna stop me. No.
Yeah, I've felt that too as a player, that like I notice a lot of new players that I've DM'd for are very reactive. They wait for that hook to show up before they start, coming up with ideas. But I've always kind of seen myself, anytime I'm a player, I call them in my own mind, I call them like a quarterback player. Like there's always at least, or in a party, it's helpful to have at least one player who the DM can just throw that football to, and they run with it, and they don't need a lot of incentive to start role playing. They just
exactly like, they just need like play, a minute piece of something interesting. And it's really like, I think the trick is finding your other players interesting. I think that really helps with role playing in general. Like if you can engage with the interesting aspects of the other players, you really don't even need a DM at that point. Like the DM's just here for you guys to just to interact with whenever you guys are ready,
Right.
basically.
Yeah. It's like, okay, your sorcerer is a tiefling. Like, what's it like being a tiefling? Tell me about tell me about your backstory. When all
Tell
else
me
fails.
Tell me everything. How's your parents? Any siblings? How's the weather? Any traumatic backstory I need to be aware of? Like,
I think
Probably
now
It's
would
funny,
be,
a lot of what's up?
I was going to say, I think now would be a good time to mention that list of questions that you found and had us answer as players in your campaign. For any aspiring DMs, I think that would be an absolutely invaluable tool.
Oh yeah. So I just usually once we get a couple sessions into a campaign, everybody, like when they come up with a character, they're like, okay, I want to be a rogue, I want to be a halfling or whatever. They come up with kind of the surface level stuff, background to some extent. But whenever we get like a good, 5 or 6 sessions into a campaign, that's when I really want to know, like, who are they as a character? What is their arc? Like, what are what makes them get out of bed in the morning? Like really digging into the deep questions. And I think that's some of the most beautiful moments that you can have playing a character is you learn a lot about yourself through that character. So as always, I tempt my players with mechanical in-game benefits. So I was like, if anybody wants inspiration, they can fill out a questionnaire, and I just found like a generic questionnaire that had like 100 questions, and I was like, answer 10 questions, and I'll give you inspiration in our next session. And I think every single player answered at least 10, and several went above and beyond. I think Connor did like 20, and Jama did like all 100. The mad lad. But yeah, that's really like it helps me understand them better as a character, as a person. And like if I ever have to step into that character and role play them, it kind of helps me make more appropriate decisions if I know them, like if I really understand the image that the player has lined up in their head with that character. Kyle, what did you think of the questionnaire?
I like the questionnaire. I like thinking about certain things. I mean, I know I always take the easy questions. I went to the bottom of the list and I was like, what are the easiest questions for me to answer? It's like I enter 100, enter 98. Everybody else is going 1 through 100. I've got to be a little different. But like even then, it's just good thought provoking questions. And it's always weird when some of the questions don't apply to you, but you have to think of them how they apply to you. And I like anything that helps flesh out your character, that gives you mechanical benefits. So, I know some people.
And even if you didn't answer them, I bet some of those questions now, like when you go into a session, I bet you think about like, I didn't know the answer to that question at the time, but maybe I'll learn the answer, in this session or something.
Yeah, I think if I were going to go back and look at some of the questions, there's some things that would stick out more than they previously did. Just because it's not like I hate like answering questions, but I'm just more of a like discover my character as I go type of person, and that's why
I think you had only played him 1 week at that point. I think that you may have had
true.
at most one session.
Yeah,
and that's why I try to wait till we're like kind of 5 or 6 sessions, because they're still kind of feeling out. Like most people don't even know what their character is other than like face value stuff after the first session.
Yeah, for sure. And I just like, that's what I was saying. That's why I never fill up my bonds, ideals, traits, and flaws. Because I'm just like, I don't know what they are yet. Like, I'll figure them out. I'll figure them out when they come up. Sometimes you interact with things differently than you think you will, and that becomes canon. So you're just like, interesting. Let me update this a little bit.
I think having at least one of those kind of helps guide you a little bit. Just an ideal, or just a bond, just a little something to start kind of figuring out who they are. But yeah, I definitely, anytime I play a character, I definitely don't even know what their whole deal is from the jump.
Well, I'm supposed to know what their critical life-changing flaw is, but I don't even know their favorite color. Like,
and like I think the party kind of will influence that too. Like when you meet, because unfortunately, we don't do session zeros as much as I would like. I really wish we got together to make characters, but just due to scheduling and time constraints, it's hard enough to get together for a session. So often people will make their characters ahead of time. But yeah, once you kind of like get to know the other character, like, okay, well, what's the paladin like? What's the rogue like? I think that definitely kind of rubs off and influences your character too.
Yeah, and find out which characters you do and don't like, and why you do or don't like them.
You're right.
There's
right.
a there's a, there's a there's a lot of fun small tensions in the party of people who are just kind of like, I don't know if I care about you or not. Like if you died right now, I don't know if I would rob you or bury you. Like maybe I'll do both out of both respect and disrespect. I don't know. Like, and that's when it happens when you have this like ragtag group of like thugs, basically.
Yeah, just misfits all kind of thrown together. And...
Exactly. There's not this like strong. There hasn't been very many like life-threatening moments where it's like we've had no choice but to like rely on each other. Those are really when those strong forges are bonded. Is when there's moments where like the odds are completely overwhelming. Like you guys are backed into a corner, and it's like, all right, now we have no choice but to rely on each other to get us out of the situation. And that's why when you have characters like me and Boldgrave, Vrain and Boldgrave, they've got some history with each other, so some of that connection's already been forged, and so there's a little bit more of a trust factor going on, among other things. That way you don't have to like role play it out. You can just kind of say it exists already, and then just get in the habit of doing it.
Yeah, being able to improvise and be like, oh, remember Budapest or whatever?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Having those little stories where it's like, okay, it's maybe not exactly spelled out, but the characters have a bond with each other that can just be pulled out of nowhere, really.
Basically, it's kind of the
fun of
improv. The beauty of role playing and improv role playing is like, for the most part, maybe I don't know if this is every DM's like this, or maybe if you're just chill with it, like you just kind of let background role playing happen naturally. Because we're not maybe it's just me, but like this group isn't exceptionally good at long backgrounds. We're kind of very open ended about filling in our background as time goes on, and that's has its pros and cons. Pros being that it opens a lot of room for a lot of improv and role playing. The con is that it's really hard to involve your background if the DM doesn't know what the background is. So it's like you need the background to be ingrained in the setting a little bit.
I've always been a firm believer that the most interesting thing that's happened in a character's life should be happening in the session, essentially, or happening in the campaign at some point. Having this long-winded backstory about, oh, I killed my brother and my father chased me down, all the, all this,
I was a poor farm boy in Tatooine, and then they killed my aunt and uncle, so I had to go kill the emperor and his Sith princess, and then
right.
And so now I'm level 3, and we're going into this adventure. Like,
yeah, it's like, dude, we're level 1. Like, how have you done all this as a first level or 0 level player? Yeah, totally. I think that's definitely appropriate for like higher level campaigns to have like fleshed out backstories. But yeah, you should really just kind of blank slate of a character.
Yeah, it's important to keep in mind that like when creating your backgrounds in terms of like your arc, I guess. Just keep in mind the tiers of play and how they scale with the location, and be like, all right, like level tier 1 is super local, so your backstory typically would have to involve something on that scale. Be like, maybe you're just like a local farmer who, like, I don't know, stopped an uprising or discovered a secret, or
maybe you're a local farmer who has a bone to pick with a new tax from the new local lord who's living lavishly while everybody in town is, basically in squalor. Maybe that's how you start your adventuring off. And then later on, you find out maybe in tier 2 that, turns out that the lord who was running that small town is actually like a powerful wizard trying to search his way into lichdom or something. But you didn't know that because you were level 0.
That's a huge escalation, but it's certainly possible. Or maybe usually that situation would be like the town lord, the regent, like made a deal with some devil or something to rise to power way too quickly, and the reason that he keeps exerting these taxes is because he's protected magically. And so, but something in that situation, what you're like, all right, I hate this. I hate this guy because he screwed us all over. Now, why did you leave your town in essence to get stronger? Like, what was the triggering? What was your like burning of aunt and uncle? You know, like what was
Exactly.
your act two
yes.
moment?
I was totally just going to bring that up. Like the hero's journey is like, before you embark on that journey, you are just living your daily life as most of us do in real life. You're just trying to get by. You have some goals and aspirations, but it's a very slow process. And then when you become a first level adventurer, I say adventure instead of hero because not every campaign is about being a hero, but in essence, it's a hero's journey, and you're crossing that threshold into the unknown, and this is where your story begins, your real story.
This
that
is
will
it's your
define
act two
your life,
moment. So
essentially.
it's a roleplay philosophy that we should probably we should probably think on further at some point. Is the Act 2 background philosophy. Maybe we can make it a thing in the role playing community. Like, because you have your Act 1, you're at home, and your Act 2 is what made you leave your home. And that's kind of where you should be in levels 1 through 3 is your Act 2. Like, the campaign is your Act 2, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's very much the mentality I like when I make a character. I go into like, I'm a farmer, even a soldier, even somebody who fights for a living, or maybe I mean, you could be a soldier and never see conflict too. Just a guard, just an NPC. Kind of, you're kind of like before you're an adventurer, you're basically just an NPC in the world. Nothing really of note happens to you, and then this, like I said, the most interesting thing in this person's life happens in the session. It's an adventure. Connor, do we have any other questions? I've been trying to keep an eye on the chat, but
We
do you
didn't
have any?
have particularly too many. We didn't have too many visitors. I threw one in there because at one point in the stream, Kyle was talking about how, okay, well, being a warlock in Star Wars 5e makes a lot of sense because you're essentially using the Force or your master as a patron. So in that same vein, if that's how a warlock would work in Star Wars 5e, then my question was, how would you make something like a wizard work? And I mean, they have their own spellcasting classes, etc. But
Yeah,
say
You're talking about
for one
so
of our
like
viewers,
learning the Force, if you will,
yeah,
through knowledge. Um, I feel like the core of a core. I think the core of a Jedi, right, is a cross between like a cleric and a wizard. I think innately, I think that's kind of where they reside, and depending on where you are on that spectrum, um, you'll find yourself more like a wizard or more like a cleric. Um,
you
so
could
I'm trying to think of
probably
it. I think the other argument for that is if you take is the tech casting. If you find like a full tech caster in Star Wars, that would be the equivalent of wizard because that's how you effectively learn things as a tech caster. You're
exactly.
like I'm tweaking, I'm growing, I'm learning
study and
things. I'm like,
practice.
exactly.
Here's the
Like,
thing.
hey, I just discovered this new ability. My gun can now shoot ice along with its regular ammo, and also this hurts. So, like, I think tech casting would be the most like if you wanted to keep in thematic lining, a tech caster would probably be a reasonable route to go. If you desperately wanted to be a force user, you would pick up consular a force wizard. You would pick up consular, and you would just kind of like narrate your experience with the force that way. You would probably you'd be like, "Hey, I'm a Jedi consular, and I'm out looking for ancient like holocrons, Jedi holocrons, and maybe even Sith holocrons, just because knowledge is power." But it also depends on what setting of the Star Wars universe you're in at the time. But you're like, I'm out here seeking information, and like I want to get these holocrons, and I want to learn how to experience the Force in more ways. I want to broaden my connection with the Force.
Exactly.
Yeah, in the modern era of Star Wars, it's definitely, I feel like you see a lot fewer wizards, just because it's a broken religion that has, after the fall of the Jedi Order, essentially, it really just became they became very scattered. Any Jedi that exist in the universe are usually by themselves, and finding a master is very difficult. And finding any kind of, like you said, holocrons or any kind of text or anything is few and far between. My answer probably would have been if a wizard would be more likely to exist in something like the Clone Wars or the Old Republic setting, where you have this Jedi library with a wealth of knowledge to pull from. But I just think innately it's hard to get away from the spiritual aspect of being a Jedi. There's so much about emotion and connections to nature and other living creatures, where I've always seen wizards as a very like atheist kind
Sterile.
of like, yeah,
They're
just
a very
like
sterile approach to magic and the Force, and that doesn't really work with the Force. Works better with
yeah,
Jack.
like in D&D, like I mean, like I said, there's anything is possible. So there's certainly a world where wizards worship a deity. But yeah, I've in my kind of depiction, I've always seen it as more of like a atheist, kind of like like the tech caster, like he was saying, just kind of like not really having anything to do with religion, more just
It's true. I mean, you're saying that, but your character in my off campaign is a wizard who effectively worships a deity or two deities, or however you want to like delineate that. So it's
which is
definitely
funny because
possible.
it totally hasn't come up yet. But
No, it
yeah,
has
no,
not.
that was something that I really like when I came up with that character. I was like, I want to do something different. I want to try to make him unique. And yeah, I was like, what god would a necromancer worship, if any?
And it's super interesting because like I don't know, especially when you effectively worship two different gods, but that's kind of like this weird awkward balance that you walk as your necromancer. So it's pretty sweet. We'll hopefully it plays out interesting enough.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. It's been tough to it's like you want to take. Go ahead.
Go on. No, you go.
I was just going to say you want to take time to have character moments and flesh things out, but also like generally there's some kind of like central plot line that the DM has presented that
exactly.
You have to kind of balance both.
We do have a question from a viewer, just a note.
Okay, drop it in.
I was going to bring that up when I was just trying to finish.
Was that what you were reading there real quick?
Yeah. Okay. I guess since we brought it up, Sammy asks, he says, do you think physical copies of books of the Force and Jedi's of the Force and Jedi are worth credits, or is there a market for those books? I would say, in the canon, I think physical copies of any kind of book is pretty few and far between. Most everything is digital. So to the right collector, to the right, think of it kind of like an art piece, really. Like, I think there are some people that would pay a very high price. But to the average citizen, it might be worthless, but to the right person, it could be worth a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle, do you want to answer? What are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree with you entirely. It's definitely going to be it's going to be collector dependent, collector or like religious fanatic or religious or power.
Either somebody who's seeking to actively grow their connection to the Force and learn
or just someone who understands truly what it really is, and somebody who's like, hey, I don't want that. I want to have that for myself. I don't want other people to have that. Or whatever the case
is. To keep it out of the hands of others who might abuse it.
For reference, the question is based on our last session, which you guys can go see on YouTube right now.
Oh yeah, it ended the end. I guess we talked about the fight, but we didn't really talk about the little wrap up at the end. They discovered that this vampire had a extensive library of physical books, which it could have very easily just been holocrons or datacrons or whatever, but I intentionally decided to have them be physical copies because that's something you don't see. I'm trying to I want to pay respect to the canon and try to embrace that, but also it's my campaign and my world, or our campaign rather, all the players together. We're writing this story, and so I want there to be things in this campaign that you wouldn't find in the movies. Like if we could just very easily recreate the movies in the campaign, but what fun would that be?
Exactly. Nobody wants to recreate episodes 7 through 9.
Oh God.
Oh Lord.
Leave your comments. Leave your thoughts on that in the comments. We got any other questions, Kyle?
No, and it looks like we are coming up on just over the 1 hour mark here. So I think without further ado, I think that would be a good point to end our first podcast. We did manage to recap the events of the session. We got to talk about both of your backgrounds in role playing and establishing credentials. We did a pretty good job of just kind of leaving a formula for us to follow. So for everyone who has been listening, thank you very much. Let me see if there is okay.
And anyone who listens to the VOD, which I'm sure will inevitably go up on our channel, thank you so much for listening, and please like and subscribe. We try to avoid doing all the begging for likes and stuff in the actual session, but we're a growing channel, so we really appreciate any support. Send this to a friend, post it on Facebook, whatever, anything helps.
Absolutely.
And especially since this is both a Star Wars and a Dungeons and Dragons channel, kind of one and the same, there's probably a strong chance you know somebody who is at least interested in one or both of those things. So we could be a new resource for them. So yes, for lack of a better term, we do plan on shilling a bit more on the podcast than we do in the streams, because we want we want people to come and see the content,
Right.
Whereas stuff like this that's more individual based, okay, we can have a little more fun with that. But
and without going into too much detail, we will be putting out more videos in the future. We do want to do like some more in-depth analysis of the system. Star Wars 5e is what we play, and as of right now, we play a lot of regular 5th edition D&D. But in the future, we do want to be putting out more content for that, because as of right now, it's pretty non-existent. So look forward to more to come.
All right.
Yep, agreed.
And with that, let's take our long rest.